Hey everyone. Hi, it's Colleen here with Portugal the Place. We're really excited to have you here for another conversation about moving to Portugal. We're just going to give a minute for everyone to get signed in. I see a lot of folks are logging in. That is fantastic. Again, keep saying hello and where you're from. It's just great to see all of you and to know that you're here. I just got back from a crazy 10 days on the road doing a vacation kind of research trip through France and Spain, research for a book, not for another service. And we had an amazing time, but I can't tell you how wonderful it is to be back in beautiful Portugal. It is just, I was so looking forward to this conversation. So if you're new here and haven't joined us before, please feel free to write your questions in the chat and we'll get to as many of them as possible. Any question about moving to Portugal is welcomed. You know, of course, we can talk about the visa processes and the immigration concerns, anything that you have to do with finding a place here in Portugal, all of those topics. But also if you've got other questions, cultural questions, language, moving family or pets, anything that's on your mind, please feel free to jump in and start the conversation. So wonderful to have you here. I see people from Texas and from Colorado. I saw some folks that were logging in from across the country. And so really excited to be here and speaking with everyone. We're just going to take just one more second just to make sure everybody is getting logged in, and then we will jump right into the questions. And thank you so much. If you're following us right now live, if you are over on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, LinkedIn, any of our live platforms, YouTube, again, share your questions in the chat and we'll move them over in here so that we can answer those as well. And welcome. We're really glad to have you here. Again, I'm Colleen with Portugal the Place, and this is our monthly webinar that we provide to try to be available and answer as many questions in real time about living in Portugal. I think we have two topics that we've seen kind of come in over and over again that I want to jump into right away. So as we get started, we're going to start with the first question I'm getting is about the fires. Of course, I know those of you that are in Colorado, in my home state of Oregon, places in Canada, across North America, you're dealing with some severe fires right now. And of course, our hearts are all out there with you as you go through that. Here in Europe, we are having a significant situation with fires. Spain and Portugal, Spain is getting the bulk of them right now. Portugal has had some smaller situations, but so far, fingers crossed, they've been managed. Spain, however, is dealing with significant evacuations and fire in the center around Madrid and Toledo and those areas. So that is certainly a factor that people are considering. And France as well is having major issues around Bordeaux and those areas. So if you haven't tracked that yet, or if you haven't heard, this is an unprecedented time in Europe with the heat. Portugal itself hasn't really been getting the extreme heat that the other parts of Europe have been getting. Italy is also dealing with major fires down in the Puglia region and Sicily. These are areas that have just been hit with massive heat events. So right now, I've got a lot of people asking about Portugal. Portugal has been this year so far maintaining. We have had some fires. It's totally normal to have forest fires here in the more national forest, national park areas. Right now, Portugal is on high alert. Everybody is being asked to be vigilant and uber careful. And so far, that's what we're dealing with. One thing to note, though, a lot of people talk to me, they get online with me and they will have a call and they'll have an area that they've targeted perhaps for interest. They might want to live in the mountains, or they have a conversation because they've seen some lesser priced properties, things like that, out in some of these more remote areas. And one of the conversations we do have, quite frankly, is thinking about things like fire danger and also evacuation. One thing they do really well here in Portugal is they have a national system of texting on the SMS. So as soon as you have your phone roaming on the networks here in Portugal, so it doesn't have to be a Portuguese phone number, you just have to be on the Portuguese networks. If there's a national emergency or a regional emergency, they will start sending out texts and warning you and letting you know what the status is, which is amazing. They also put out radio announcements and have all of that information out as well as online. But it is definitely something that takes you a little bit to adjust to because, of course, there's language barriers, there's concerns about understanding what their directions are. And so we really dig into this when people are talking about where to live. And one of the things we talk about, very frankly, is access, evacuation routes, and making sure that you're not putting yourself right in the center of an area typically known for extreme fire danger. So that's a topic that's coming up a lot. We've got it from our live feeds and we've had it coming in from some questions. Right now, we're still smack in the middle of summer, so I know it's not anywhere close to the danger isn't over yet, but that's the status as of today. The second thing that I can tell you is that, yes, we are still seeing a lot of challenges in getting your initial VFS appointment. This is the appointment that you need to schedule to be able to start the process of getting a long-term visa. Now, the VFS offices and e-visa, if you're in New Jersey, for example, these offices are running at maximum capacity. They're getting so many inquiries that's definitely affecting it. I can say that our clients are seeing some movement. They are getting some appointments, but it is definitely a process of looking every day, of making multiple inquiries. We help people with getting the appointments by checking on our time zone as well when you're one of our clients. So it's a teamwork. It's definitely an effort that we all have to do together, but I see this question is just coming in, rolling in from a variety of sources right now. So just to kind of grab this and put this out there, there is only one way to do it. You have to make that account. You have to go in. You have to watch that calendar. You have to take a long-term visa appointment. You cannot cut corners and do like a short one or something because they will not accept you when you get there if you don't have the right type of an appointment. And you do just have to be diligent and look every day. It will happen, but I totally understand how frustrating it can feel if this has become like the main thing you're focusing on. So, okay, let's dig into some of our first questions here. All right, for an adventurer who loves to bike everywhere, not much of a beach person, but nice weather almost all of the time. I do not care for a lot of rain. What area of Portugal comes to your mind? All right, so there's so many great areas for people that love to cycle. In fact, Portugal is just avid cyclists. You see them everywhere. So you really just have to pull inland a little bit. If you stay from about the Silver Coast all the way south down past Lisbon, there are amazing rolling hills and beautiful communities that will allow you to have that lifestyle and be cycling on country roads, on bike trails, things like that without being right on the ocean. And that will allow you to be in areas that have on average of about 300 days of sunshine a year. So for example, on the Silver Coast, if you pull in about say 10 minutes, 15 minutes in from the coast, you've got Caldas da Rainha, you've got Leiria, you have Alcobaça. Going farther south, you have areas such as Torres Vedras, and you continue like Mafra. All of these areas, Lourinhã, they all offer great cycling opportunities in beautiful climates that give you gorgeous views. And they're not full-on mountains. It's rolling hills. It is distant vineyards and orchards, little villages, really an idyllic European experience when you're cycling. So lots and lots of options, but I would definitely check out the Silver Coast or the area just north of Lisbon. All right, so I am planning on moving to the town of Viana do Castelo. I'm planning right now to live downtown, renting a T1 probably, but I also know that in most places, if you live a little ways out, you can have more bang for your buck. What's car ownership like in Portugal? So Viana do Castelo is beautiful. It's absolutely stunning city, and it is one of the areas that has some really robust public transportation. You've got a good bus system, and the train, you can get back and forth to Viana do Castelo from Porto very easily and take the train up along the Minho River all the way into Spain. So it's a very, very connected area. But car ownership is something to consider, because if you move out of the center, if you move out into Dark or some of the neighborhoods that are outside, you go up the river, say to Caminha or Praia de Ancora, some of those areas, having a car would be advisable. You don't want to just depend on a bus schedule. And so car ownership can be, it's very easy. You don't have to have a Portuguese driver's license to purchase a car. You don't have to have your residency yet to purchase a car. It's totally fine. You can do that with your American license or your foreign license. The one thing to note is cars are typically more expensive in Portugal than they are in the United States when you factor in the VAT, the tax that is assigned to it. But if you are looking at having something like an electric car, often you can get an opportunity to get some of that tax back or to get an incentive. So there's a variety of ways that you can mitigate some of that little bit of extra expense. But you can find on Marketplace and, private sales, older cars, about 10 years old or so, that you can get around 5,000 to 10,000 euros. I wouldn't go below that. And even at 5, you're still probably going to have some maintenance issues. If you want to buy a pre-owned car that has a warranty and has all of the checks and everything that you would need, I would then suggest that you'd be considering between 18,000 and 29,000, depending on the type of car. There's a lot of variables, but you can get a warranty with those cars, and there's some great reputable dealerships that you can go through, kind of like CarMax style, that have the pre-owned cars. All right. So Carol's saying, I'm moving in January 2027. I hold dual citizenship and would like to apply as an EU citizen, but my proof of address and EU passport names do not match. My EU passport has by law my birth name with a section that mentions my married last name. My proof of address from the USA has my married name. Will that be an issue when I apply for my NIF? No. In fact, the fact that you have your EU citizenship means that you're going to go through the process all with that EU paperwork. Your proof of address in the United States, as long as there's that connector, will be fine. And when we do the NIFs, for example, when you go through that, you have to provide supporting documentation. So like a birth certificate, something that's going to connect the dots, but that we've seen that before, and that's not an issue at all. And of course, with the EU citizenship, you get your NIF, you get your bank account, because those things are necessary for life here, but you don't have to go through the visa process. You will just move to Portugal when you're ready, and then register your address that you've chosen with the local junta, and show that you are now a resident in Portugal. You have a much simpler process. All right. So planning scouting trip in October, November. We was just in Madeira and loved it. Where would you recommend looking with plenty of expats? So if you're looking in Portugal, expats are kind of everywhere. It depends on the immigrant community that you're looking for. But if you're looking for American immigrants, you will find concentrations of American immigrants in the Silver Coast, Nazaré, Caldas da Rainha, that area. That is a vibrant community with all kinds of activities going on. Of course, Lisbon and Porto, the main urban areas, are going to have large communities as well. And you will find some in the Algarve. There is a great community of expats, immigrants from England, Ireland, all over the EU, Americans down in the Algarve as well. But if you're looking for a little bit of a more collective kind of international community where you've got people from across the EU, across Asia, all kinds of immigrants living in Portugal together, you're going to find that experience in places that have these vibrant connections. Aveiro, for example, south of Porto, Coimbra, international city with a big, big expat community, and the Silver Coast, Lisbon area, Setúbal. There really is no shortage of opportunities to connect with these communities out here. So that's one of the things we do when you're on the scouting trips with us. That's one of the services that we really love, is connecting people and helping you see where everyone's at and which areas will give you different opportunities to build your community and to build your life in Portugal. All right. Is buying a car in Portugal expensive? Is it more economically feasible to use public transportation? Well, again, kind of speaking, Wayne, to the earlier conversation that we were having about you can buy a private party car that's an older vehicle. You might be able to find something under 10,000. Most used car, pre-owned cars that are only a couple of years old are running between around 18 and 29,000 with warranties and guarantees and all of that. And it just depends on where you plan to live. If you're going to live in an urban area like Porto, Lisbon, you really don't need to depend on a car. The public transportation is robust. There's metro systems, there's buses, and renting a car for when you want to go farther afield becomes very affordable. So that could be very economical for you, but you're trading off the cost of living to live in those cities and to have that. But if you want to live in an area that is less expensive on your expenses, you may want to consider a car, because at that point, the public transportation is primarily buses, and that can be harder to coordinate your day-to-day life around. So it really depends on what your ultimate goal is living in Portugal. All right. Lastly, are there any Facebook pages you recommend to start building relationships, particularly for those moving to Caldish, Foz, Nazaré? There's a lot of them. The links are I'm trying to think. We have them all in the document we use in different cities. I know there's Nazaré and Friends, I believe, which is a large group that is focused on Nazaré. There's Alcobaça International. There's Silver Coast. Oh gosh, something Silver Coast, can't remember right now. Caldish Serena also has a large Facebook group. There are a significant amount of them for the Silver Coast. So that's absolutely not an issue. You will find plenty of information and plenty of groups to join. And then when you work with Portugal the Place, once you've established your resident, whether purchasing or renting, we have private WhatsApp groups that are filled with our communities from across the country that we connect you with and immediately help you build those connections. So that's also something that once you've chosen your location, then we introduce you in the groups if you wish, and then help you connect with the folks with not only regional, but also interests like pet owners or folks that are into outdoor lifestyles, that kind of thing. All right. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. Can I schedule a VFS appointment in any area in the US? No, you have to be very careful and make sure you schedule geographically the correct office. Everything west of the Rocky Mountains is San Francisco. So for you all on the west side of the nation, it's very straightforward. It is only San Francisco. If you are east of the Rocky Mountains, then your geography, you really need to go onto the site. The VFS Global site, look specifically at your area and your zip code and choose the proper location. They will not accept you if you go to the wrong one. So very, very important to use the one that's assigned to you. All right. Hey, Tim. I have my NIF that I obtained through another agency. I'm now a client of PTP. How would I go about registering PTP as my NIF representative? Also, very much looking forward to my PTP immersion trip in October. We're looking forward to it too, Tim. That's great. You don't have to worry about switching your NIF right now to us because it's totally fine. The fiscal representative is really just the reason they have it is, honestly, if you were to skip out and leave a big debt, the person that's the fiscal responsible person would have to kind of assume that. So that's what that's all about. That's why you have a fiscal representative until you live in Portugal. Once it comes up for renewal, that's when we can switch that information in the tax authority website, and we'll do that for you and then continue to represent you. Or when you get here and you physically live in Portugal, you don't need a fiscal representative anymore because you're a resident, and then you take that responsibility on yourself. So not an issue at all, Tim. We've got you covered. All right. I have looked into the required paperwork required to move with my dog. If I decided not to use a pet relocation service, how hard is it to get it all done myself? Well, it really depends on the dog. So it depends a lot on where you live geographically and the dog. So we have our 125-pound Newfoundland, and we were moving with my father at the time, who was 83, and we had a lot of moving parts. So for me, peace of mind and not having to worry about missing a step and making sure that Dutch was moved with us was worth the cost because we had so much happening. But If we would have had a smaller dog, a dog that didn't need to have a kennel built for him and have just one plane that could take him, I may have decided to do it myself because it is pretty straightforward. It really depends also on the anxiety level of your dog and if you have to make a connecting flight for the animal. That's really, really key. If you have to go from your home city, make a connection to get to Portugal, having the pet relocation companies helping you navigate all of that and being there if there's a delay, if something happens, the connecting flight gets canceled, those things are key. That's really, really one of the values. They're like an insurance policy. Yes, you could do it yourself in many cases, but when something goes wrong, if you're doing it yourself, you will have very little resources to be able to manage it. And for a lot of us, our furry friends, they're our family. So it's one of the things that definitely people get really worried about. If you can take your dog on the plane, then of course I would highly recommend just doing it yourself. But if there is elements that are, concerning you about the anxiety of the dog, the travel time, the city location, getting the vet checkups done properly because of maybe some health concerns with the dog, I would highly recommend using a pet relocation company. All right, for a stay under 3 months, do we need a visa? Planning a scouting trip in October 2027. You don't need a visa at all. It's called a tourist visa, but you don't do anything to get that. That is a natural opportunity to travel in Portugal, and that is the Schengen. So that is all of the countries that are under this agreement. So you have a total of 90 days every 180 days to travel within Portugal, Spain, Germany, France. There's a variety of about 26 countries that are included in this agreement. And so it's collective. It's 90 days total for all of these countries. And that's a rolling calendar. So it drops off the back. It's not reset every year, every 6 months. You can't go 90 days in, out for a week, and then start it over again. It's a rolling calendar. So planning for a scouting trip in October of 2027, you could travel in and out between now and then. And depending on how long you want to come over for, you would still pick up time and be able to be here as long as you comply with that 90 days that is required. All right. What do you find is the biggest, most common reason people from the US are moving to Portugal? That is a great question. And we do get some common threads. And quite frankly, they've changed in the last couple of years. Those of us that moved 6 years ago, we had an opportunity because our lives kind of got turned upside down with COVID, things like that. We had a break in careers and decided to go on an adventure, try something different, and happily fulfilled maybe a long-held dream of moving to Europe. And that for many still stands. But what we've seen in the last couple of years is two things. One, cost of living, anxiety over healthcare costs, concern about quality of life, and a general sense of peace and calm that people are looking for. There's a much higher level of anxiety amongst people, families with small children, wanting to move their children away from the public schools for fear of gun violence. We're seeing people that want to have a stronger sense of community and peace and maybe lack of division. And the other thing that we're really starting to see here recently is people feeling like they just can't imagine continuing on the track of things the way they're going. And without getting into politics, I really do respect and try to be, as open and neutral as possible. There has been a significant change in people just saying, it's time for a change, that they no longer align with what they had in the past and are considering finding a place that looks at the world and things in a different way. So, the last couple of years, we've seen a significant change in the anxiety levels of our American clients. And I feel for people because there's a lot of factors influencing folks right now. All right. My dog is a calm 55-pound beagle mix. She would have to go in the cargo hold. I found a flight from here to Frankfurt to Porto with a 4-hour layover. I've heard great things about Lufthansa. There is a location in Frankfurt, has a special area just for live animals between flights. Any experience with them for clients? That's where Dutch connected through. So even though we used a pet relocation, we had to use Lufthansa because they have the most generous pet policy and they have that pet hotel. It's a place where all the animals can can go and hang out on the connecting flights. They stretch their legs and get out. So we had no issue with that. It was great. Whether you use a company or do it yourself, that's a great way to, make it as easy as possible for the animals, and they get to stretch their legs. So ideally, it's great to be able to do as much nonstop as possible, but getting into Porto, that makes total sense. So it would be a good option. What is the average 3-month rental cost around Lisbon? Is that common month to month? So you can't, for the visa, do a 3-month or month to month. The visas all require a 12-month minimum lease that is legal and licensed. So if you're planning on doing a visa and moving to Portugal, you have a very strict requirement of either a lease that is registered and legal that is a minimum of 12 months, or you can purchase a home and have that as your proof of accommodation. If you're thinking about coming over like on a scouting trip, you want to live for a couple of months, then Airbnbs run the gamut. It depends on the time of year. It depends on the location. If you come in the winter time and you're in Lisbon, you could be lower than, $100 a night. If you come in peak season, you want to come in like July, you could be looking at 3-4 times that. So it really has a lot of factors on what you're trying to accomplish. But if you're looking for residency and to move here, everything has to be done in a very specific order, in a very specific required documentation. And we're happy to dive into that if you want to do a call and just understand what that could look like. That's one of the very first conversations we have with folks. All right. Hey, Eric. Hi. If you own property in Portugal that you're renting out as income property, can you use that address as your residency address for the visa? No, you cannot have that overlapping. You can use it when you don't renew that lease for the person. So let's say you do that 12-month lease for that property and the person has that 12-month lease. When that lease is coming up and completing, then you can use it showing that you will be a resident from that date. But for the next, let's say 12 months, when it's their residence, you can't have double residency. So that is not going to be possible for you to use as your address until the person is getting ready to vacate their lease. All right. Has NHR tax regime ending affected people moving to Portugal? Not at all. Not at all. We have not seen any adjustment in that for the clients talking with us now. It's been so long that I'm going to guess a lot of folks are even going to ask what NHR tax regime was. It was a tax discount that they used to offer that has not been in effect since 2023. So no, it hasn't been a factor at all for folks when they're considering moving here. All right. Do you provide immigration lawyers as part of your service? Once we are in Portugal, we are looking for someone to go to the IMO appointments with us to make sure it all goes smoothly. So we help with the entire process. We help through the entire, starting with the VFS, getting your appointments, getting all your documents, moving you through the whole process, helping you prepare for your IMO appointment. If you need an immigration attorney or someone to assist, we have people that can do that, so we can schedule that. Most folks decide that they're prepared and they feel pretty comfortable going. But if you want to have someone with you and you feel like maybe yours is a little more complicated or has some explanations, then we absolutely have folks that can do that. But it's not a standalone service. We do have that as part of our entire relocation package because we handle everything from the very beginning, the early conversations and getting your timeline, your budget, everything aligned and prepared, all the way through even renewals. You can continue working with us as you renew after you become residents. All right, looking for warm water beaches. Where do we start our search for location? Well, Portugal is on the Atlantic. So warm water isn't really a thing in Portugal. It is warmer in the Algarve. That's the warmest water you're going to get seasonally. It's really only warmer, and I'm using that term because it's still not Mediterranean temperatures, and it's definitely not like Pacific or Caribbean, Hawaii, that kind of temperature. But the Algarve will be the warmest from July, August, September. Up and around Lisbon and up around the Stupel Peninsula, you get a little bit of that same thing. But most of what you're going to experience is cooler water. It is the Atlantic. And even with the hot summer and the sunshine all year round, the temperature of the water is much significantly cooler than the more shallow, warmer waters of some of the Mediterranean and things like that. All right. Are there resources you recommend for foreigners trying to find jobs in Portugal? My goal is to secure a job offer before starting the visa process. So it's really important. This is a great question. It's really important that you know that unless you are able to get a contract with a Portuguese company who is willing to sponsor you on a visa, you cannot have a Portuguese company or work for a Portuguese anything and go for one of these visas, like the passive income visa or the digital nomad visa. Those visas require you to have external income sources. The one thing they don't want to have happen is foreigners coming in and taking jobs that would go to the Portuguese. That's very, very important to the Portuguese government, that the foreigners are not taking jobs that the Portuguese need. So you could get a job right now if you were looking online. You can look internationally. You can look at companies that allow you to work anywhere. A lot of companies in Spain, France, Germany, some of the larger European countries have the ability for you to work in Europe. And so we do have a lot of clients that'll go on to the different boards and look for international opportunities that allow you to work in Portugal. As far as getting a job in Portugal, though, you'd have to have a very specific skill set. So, for example, if you were a teacher and the international schools were hiring, that's an opportunity, but they would sponsor you on the visa. They would be saying, okay, I need an American to teach my American course load, and they will sponsor you for specific contractual visas. So it is a very different process, and I would encourage you to really look outside of Portugal at a job that allows you to work remote so that you could qualify for the D8 visa, which is the digital nomad visa. All right. What do you love most about Portugal, the place? Well, it's interesting because when we started, my husband and I, when we started this, we started it with the fact that we had people asking us how we did it. And because I come from a long background of project management and planning and everything, I was like, okay, I want to kind of fill the gap and help and get people realistically prepared for the process. But what I love about it now, years later, is the fact that every time I work with someone new that comes to Portugal, I fall in love with Portugal all over again. It keeps it fresh. I feel like I see it through fresh eyes every day because the enthusiasm, the excitement, the messages I get from people saying how excited their life is now, how they're living it. I have a neighbor who we helped move. She's actually my neighbor. And she said she wanted to start her ceramics and pottery studio, and she wanted to do this full time. And I walk the dogs and I walk by and I see her doing that. And there's just something so incredibly satisfying to see people fulfill these thoughts and desires and dreams, and also be realistically prepared for the fact that it's not perfect. It can be challenging. There's a lot of different elements. You're strong when you move abroad. Less than 7% of people in the United States ever live anywhere internationally. And so to do this, to pick up and go to something that's all brand new, I love the people we work with because these are some really, really driven, strong, focused people that want to have another chapter. So I love it. I get to see Portugal over and over again through the eyes of the folks that just get here. All right. Hey, Greer. Hi, just joined the call. I'm excited to work with PTP team. Received my NIF, opened a Portuguese bank account, looking forward to next step in obtaining the D7 appointment. Yes, we were just talking about that. The appointment is the all important piece of the puzzle. We are all working so hard to try to find those appointments. Don't give up. I know it can be frustrating because that's when you log in and over again, it says no appointment, but we are finding them. The clients are getting them and we are going through the process and people are getting here. So just really uber focused, work with the team, Greer, make sure that you're coordinating with Andrea and everything so that we're looking opposite times than you're looking and so that we can maximize our efforts and get you that appointment. Andreas, if you are on the D7 visa, are you able to also work freelance with US clients? Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, we started Portugal the Place with being on the D7 visa. So no problem with that at all. And lots of people do that. The income just doesn't count as passive income. You'll need to have your passive income proof, but you can work freelance, you can be an artist, you can have all types of additional income coming in. That's not restricted at all. Just can't have a job that you would take from the Portuguese folks. All right. My grandma was born in Portugal. I have no birth certificate, just pictures. Is it difficult to claim residency? So they definitely require a paper trail. So in that case, you would have to do some digging, and most people hire an attorney for that because they can go through the proper channels to secure the documentation that shows that you have the lineage to apply through familia granted citizenship. It costs about 2,000-ish euros from what I understand from folks that have had these people that do that. And it's a process of just connecting the dots and getting all your paperwork together. And then once you do have it, it's pretty straightforward. All right. I would love to come for a 3-month exploration tour of Portugal divided between the Silver Coast and the Algarve. What months would you recommend? I lived in Africa for 19 years and ready for a new location to explore. So if you're looking to move to Portugal and you're really considering this as another chapter in your travels, I would recommend staying over the period of time that people, quote unquote, think of as the worst time in Portugal. And that would be January through March. Okay. It's the darkest time. That's when all the Christmas lights are down and it's kind of quiet. January is really subdued. The Algarve gets really quiet. It's when a lot of restaurants and businesses close to prepare for the next season. It's when the storms come in. It's definitely a different vibe. And then as you go through February, it's Carnival. You see everybody comes back out again. February, March, that's Carnival. And you can see how it's a very short period of time before all the festivals and everything are going again for Carnival. And depending on the year you do this, when Easter is and everything, there's lots of different things that are going on through that end of February, March-ish, April, depending on the dates of Easter. But I would really recommend, if you're seriously considering looking at Portugal, coming in what people consider the worst or most quiet time of the year and see how that vibe fits you, because it's really easy to fall in love when, like this afternoon, we're sitting outside at the cafe and having an Aperol Spritz and watching folks walk around and just relaxing in the sunshine. It's another thing to have to, throw your raincoat on and duck out in the rain and go catch up with folks inside, and you don't have that same feeling. I love it. I think Portugal has amazing seasons, but it's important for you to have that in your mind when you're thinking about moving here. All right. You mentioned prices are a bit higher in July. Is this only with Airbnbs or annual renting as well? Just with Airbnbs and touring and traveling. This is the normal peak season from June through October. So you're going to see the prices at their highest during this period of time for hotels, airplane tickets, rental cars, and Airbnb type of bookings. But for long-term rentals and things like that, mostly what happens is demand. You just have less to work with because you're competing in a bigger pool to try to find those. We still find them, you still have them. It's not an issue. Probably the biggest area you notice the effect is the Algarve, because Algarve people will often put them up as short-term rentals, try to get as much as their rental income as they can short-term during the summer, and they don't even put those up for long-term until after the season because it's a completely different contract and tax rate. So they make a decision on if they want to get all the money in the summer or if they want to do a long-term rental later. All right. Do you have any specific recommendations or things to consider differently for women as to how to handle a big move like this independently? Well, that's one of our largest client bases is single women for a lot of factors, because one of the things we really think is incredibly important, and we've seen this time and time again, is to thrive and succeed when you move abroad. And this doesn't just apply to Portugal. This is a definite systematic effect that happens when you move alone, solo, is that there's a feeling of isolation. And that's a big fear for people. And it's not just the social side of it. It's like, what happens if I get hurt? What happens if something, goes wrong? who do I have as a support system? How will I navigate all of these things? So it's very, very understanding as a solo person to have that extra layer of like the what ifs. It's something that we really recommend people to be prepared for. Really think about what level of community and connection you need. If you're someone that loves to be out isolated and like on a rural piece of property, we don't recommend that for a solo person right away. Get a 12-month lease, do something simple to get over, make some friends, connect with the community. And then if that still draws you, then you still have plenty of time to look for that place. And maybe once you're a little more grounded, then you can pull out into those more quiet areas, because isolation is the number one thing that I think really draws people away from what they thought the experience was going to be. When we work with folks, that's the thing we talk about. We talk about expertise as far as like, what is your real desire for your life to be a year after you move to Portugal? It's kind of like the difference between preparing for a wedding and a marriage. The wedding is all exciting and you're doing the flowers and the music and all of that, just picking the venue. But we need to plan for the marriage, the long-term relationship that's going to be in play. And that's what we work very closely with you on. And I'd really encourage you to schedule a call so we can really talk through that. Because as a solo woman, one of the things we offer here at Portugal the Place is a service called ajuda, which means help in Portuguese. And it's included in your package, and then you can subscribe if you want to have it for a longer period of time. And it has translation services, support with appointments, helping you navigate all the ins and outs of the bureaucracy, connecting you to all important needs like health systems, insurances, all of that. And then also, again, that community that we talked about. We have a built-in community of folks that are just waiting with open arms to welcome the next person because they kind of paying it forward. All right. Where would you recommend staying for about a month and to 2 months exploration tour? I'm planning to move next year, but don't really know where exactly. Monique, I would love to have a call with you. And again, just for our earlier conversation that I was just having, it is so important to understand what you want your life to be like in Portugal to recommend, what your budget would be like, what your lifestyle. Are you beach people? Are you mountain people? Are you family? Are you solo? All these things would influence what I would recommend. Budget, of course, is really important. And also, long-term plans. Do you intend to stay in Portugal for the foreseeable future? So all of these kind of things are really, really important that we talk about. And we do free calls. So you're totally welcome. There's no commitment necessary, but we can get you started on that planning. And this is the perfect time to think about it, because it's a variety of options, and Portugal has a lot of choices for everyone. All right. We fell in love with Guimarães. Do you know of other towns that might share that culture, services, and weather? Well, Guimarães is fantastic. I mean, it's unique, of course, as the founding part of Portugal's history. I mean, it's just oozing with that. And the size of Guimarães is also just fantastic. There are other towns. If you haven't been to Viana do Castelo, it's slightly different weather, but still has that same vibe with the culture and the services and everything, and the university feeling. Viana do Castelo is about an hour north of Porto. It is on the mouth of the Lima River where it goes into the Atlantic, but it is absolutely stunning and has a great, really fantastic feel, vibe, culture. Everything's slightly elevated there from festivals and things like that. So would really encourage you to take a look at Viana do Castelo and see how you feel about that. I'm guessing that if you were out there, you probably did have a chance to go to Braga. So Braga is larger, of course, and has more amenities and services, but that is a place that a lot of folks really enjoy as well. And then there's a little town that is a little bit similar in size, but it doesn't have the university. So it's a little different vibe, but still culturally very active. It's called Santo Tirso. And Santo Tirso is just about 15 minutes from Guimarães, but it goes under the radar a lot. It's absolutely beautiful. It has incredible history. It's like a little Porto. The architecture is fantastic. It's got a giant green park and riverfront area, steeped in history and easy connections to Braga, Porto, all of those things. So there's a lot of choices up there, but definitely take a look at Santo Tirso. And if you haven't considered Viana do Castelo and or Ponte de Lima, I would really check those out as well. They're beautiful communities, very equal to the vibe of Guimarães. All right. Hi, Nick. Is it expensive to move items from my house in Pennsylvania to Alcobaça, Portugal? How much time would it take? Well, expensive, it's going to cost depending on how much you plan to ship. So the least expensive kind of version to ship things would be you pack, we ship. And you pack, we ship will do, you're responsible for getting it all packed up. They bring like a pod to your house, you put it in there, and then you trigger it to be shipped once you have your visa approved. That, depending on how large of a shipment, and it really does vary depending on how much, could run somewhere around 5,000 euros-ish to move those items. If you do door-to-door service where folks, you hire a moving company that will pack everything, insure everything, and move it from door to door, that, can run double that. Depending on the size of the pallet or container. We have moving companies that we can help you get quotes from. That's absolutely something that we can do. So no issue there at all. But if you're comfortable with you pack, we ship, that can be one of the most affordable ways to do it. Time, it can take 3 weeks to 6 weeks, depending on how much you're shipping again. So, but you definitely can't start that process till you have your approved visa, because we need to make sure you have the paperwork to show that you have the right to move goods without paying any taxes on it. All right. How difficult is it to get an AL license for short-term rentals? So it depends on the city completely. So if we're talking about perhaps like the Stubble Peninsula, for example, and Stubble, that would be one of the areas that we need to double check that they're still issuing. But if they are still issuing, which they were recently, so if that has continued without any interruption, it's just a matter of applying for the license and then getting the inspection to make sure it's all set up with the proper safety. And then the expense, actually, that's very affordable. It's about 1,500 euros. The expense comes from having the short-term property management companies that you would need to manage it. Because when you are remote, you're going to need to have someone that handles all the advertising, the marketing, the check-ins, the cleanings, all of that. And that on average runs 30% of the nightly rate. So you have 30% of the nightly rate to factor in, and then you have 13% of the nightly rate in taxes that you pay. So it can be pretty significant. It takes a couple of years before you really get a strong return on a new one, because you have to price very competitively, because folks just don't rent Airbnbs without reviews. So it takes a year or two before you hopefully get really, really good reviews, and then you can keep changing the price to be more competitive with what's out there. But to start with, you usually have to come in as low as possible to build up your reviews. Absolutely happy to speak with you, Eric, about that too, and jump in on the pros and cons, because we help a lot of folks navigate that decision between long and short-term rental. All right. Is a middle-aged woman relatively safe to travel alone? Absolutely. It is the number one thing that I love about living in Portugal, and it's the 7th safest country in the world. It is one of the friendliest countries you can travel in. And one of the things that I have felt so amazed about is that when I'm in Portugal and I need to go out, I'm coming back from Lisbon doing something, when I'm walking down the sidewalk, of course, you're not going to be completely unaware of your surroundings or anything, but I'm not walking with keys between my hand. I'm not looking over my shoulder all the time. I feel safe and grounded, and people are genuinely concerned about other people's well-being. It's the most confident that I've been. It actually lulls you into a sense of comfort, to where I just got back from France and Spain, and we were in a very large city in the south of France. And I started realizing that I'm not in Portugal. I needed to put my bag back around the front, and I needed to pay more attention to what was going on, because I was definitely not feeling that same sense of security there that I do in Portugal. So it's one of the key reasons many of us feel so comfortable here, is just that sense of safety and peace that you get. And as a solo woman, absolutely, I very comfortable in that. Yes. All right. What would you recommend for those of us wanting to move to Portugal that also would like to travel throughout Europe? Logistics for train connections other than Lisbon and Porto. Well, like I said, I just came back from traveling. We drove. We did almost 2 weeks between Spain and France, and the logistics are great. The roads are fantastic. Train travel is interesting because you will have trains that you can connect to. But right now, the trains are Lisbon and Porto. You're going to connect to those cities and then move out from there. They are already in the works of building the high-speed train between Madrid and Porto, which is supposed to be done in some years, but I don't want to say when that will be finished. So most of us are really either doing two things. We're either flying on the low cost flights that can be as low as like 30 to 60 euros to fly to cities that are an hour or two away, and then we explore that way. Or like we just did, we drove our car and navigated through Spain and France and absolutely explored small towns, big cities, and the connectivity from Portugal is amazing. You really appreciate how great the roads are here when you're driving in some of these other countries. But flights, we usually do more than the train, because the train connections right now really do depend on Lisbon and Porto. I highly recommend the planning call with Colleen. Oh, thanks, Tim. After talking with her, we determined that there was a better place in the Algarve for me to move to. I was initially looking at a place that didn't match the vibes I was looking for. Plus, Colleen brought up different options for purchasing an apartment that I had not considered, which matched my relocation schedule better. We had a great conversation, Tim, and I'm so excited that we're moving forward, and you're going to be here in October. So that's very cool. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, Roberto, I'm from Puerto Rico and 100% bilingual in English and Spanish. I have extensive experience in hospitality. What are my chances of getting work in that industry? Well, that will definitely help because your Spanish will accelerate you with your Portuguese. With that 40% crossover, that will certainly help you. And then if you can quickly become trilingual, then of course you will be a force within the hospitality industry. The trick is you cannot take a job from Portuguese persons. So you would need to have some form of income to come over on the visa, and then you would be able to pursue different career opportunities. Unless you are looking for a hospitality specific visa, which have short-term visas that you may be able to qualify for right now. Those are seasonal visas. So it just depends on what you're looking for long-term. But there are some seasonal visas for folks in the hospitality industry that could be an option that don't fall within the traditional residency visas. They do not allow for pathway to citizenship, for example. They're specifically work visas for the hospitality industry. All right. While waiting for your IMA appointment, can you travel back to the States and within the EU? So it's a little tricky. That's a qualified yes. So once you get your visa approved, then your next appointment will be with IMA. And IMA is the immigration authority in Portugal. And that's where you actually get your residency. The visa that you receive in the United States is to allow you to move to Portugal within 120 days of that approval. During that 120 days, you can absolutely travel because you have a valid travel visa you can move around on. That you also depend on if you have 90 days for your tourist visa still too, because that will allow you to move in and out of the other EU countries. Now, you have one entry in, which you use when you move, and then you have another in and out that you're able to use in that period of time before your residency card is issued. If you're traveling, let's say to Spain, or you're in a car, that kind of thing, they're not going to be checking. You can move in and out. There's no border checks. There's no crossing checks. So you're fine for that kind of travel. Where it gets tricky is when everything's expired and you need to get on a plane. and or a train, but mostly the plane. That's where you don't have the proper documentation, and to the system, it's going to look like you've overstayed your visa. So you should prepare for having more limited travel until you have your residency approved. And then from there, you have the ability to travel within the EU. That's where the residency card really is one of the advantages of being here, is that option. All right. When in Portugal and waiting for my IMA appointment, can I travel to Europe? What about my IMA appointment, but before I get my residency card? So that's what we were just speaking to here. When you're in Portugal, you can travel in Europe if you've still got some of your validity left on the visa. If everything's expired, it's, if you're driving, you can come and go like from neighboring country, but if you're flying, you are taking a risk because technically you don't have documentation that shows that you are able to be in Europe, that you've overstayed that 90 days. After your IMA appointment, before you get your residency card, it becomes much easier because you'll get a piece of paper at your IMA appointment and it's going to have a number on it, and that you can show that you're just waiting for your card. And then you could show that to the border, and they're much more like okay with that. But this is a gray area. Some people have done it without any issue. They go, they travel, they don't even get checked because, quite frankly, when you travel within the Schengen and you're on planes and you're doing like the low cost airlines, you don't go through as much passport control. But there is always a chance you'll get pulled out and be checked. And if you don't have proper documentation, that could be a real issue. All right. Wow. This time has just been flying by. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for all of your fantastic questions. It's been really great to get into all the variety. So we've got a last question coming up here. Is renter's insurance available like in the US? It is available. It is different. It's a content insurance. So it insures the contents of your space. It is absolutely available. It's structured a little differently, but it does provide that same sense of security that your things, that your items are protected in case of fire, some kind of disaster, some kind of situation like that. But each one's different and there's different policies you can consider. All right. So we have just had a great amount of conversation and questions. I really appreciate everybody joining us. I can't stress enough that if you're just right now in the planning stages, looking at scouting trips, thinking about moving here, please feel free to schedule the call. There's no commitment required. We never charge for these calls. We really, really, really want to make sure that you're prepared, because the best thing we can do is get you all the information and then get you on the road to having a successful transition. It won't be without bumps. This is a difficult and challenging process to relocate your whole life to another country, but we want to be there and help you through the process the best we can. Don't forget, we have another webinar coming up in August. So we will be right back at the same time at the end of August on that Sunday. We are here and available if you have any questions, any calls. This is a live, this recording has been done. So we'll be sending that out via email to everybody that signed up. And thank you so much. We really appreciate everybody. And for those of you already working with PTP, I can't say how much it means to us that you join us and that you help everyone and sharing your experiences with folks that are just starting their journey here to Portugal. So take care, have a great day, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.